Hey, it's Ramsey Dewey over here in Shanghai, China. Welcome to another edition of Q&A with the Coach. Today we have a question from an anonymous viewer. He says he is very overweight. He is over 200 kilos. But despite that, he says people generally say he's faster than he looks. But he has poor stamina. He wants to know what would be the best fighting style for a big guy like him. And also, for different body types. For example, if you're a really skinny, scrawny guy, what would be the best fighting style? Striking or grappling or, picking your opponent off from a distance or what? Anyway, thanks so much for the question, my friend. I had a student who was your size once. Big dude. Really, really strong guy. He had equal amounts of fat and muscle on him. Super duper strong and very skilled in the art of squish. If you're not familiar with the fighting style of squish, here's what it is. You get on top of your opponent and you squish. You squish him. And he was really good at that. That being said, before we concern ourselves with fighting styles and names and things like that, Style A and Style B and whatnot, concern yourself with becoming the best athlete that you can. Of all the athletic endeavors out there, fighting is the most demanding of athletic endeavors, and yet it is the one to which the least concern for athleticism is usually given. I made a whole video series about this, titled Martial Artists Are Terrible Athletes. And many of you might be thinking, but I do lots of push-ups and stuff in my martial arts class, so I'm good. But when we compare and contrast martial arts with other sports, particularly professional sports, people will almost universally agree that, hey, these other sports, basketball, football, soccer, etc., they have way better athletes than we see in martial arts. And we might say, well, part of that reason is because those sports make big money, and so the better athletes will gravitate toward those. Okay, sure, that's a valid argument, and I would also add to that they take their sports more seriously, so they take their athleticism more seriously. And so should you. So, whatever your size, whether you are a big dude, or a small, scrawny, skinny guy, or anywhere in between, become the best athlete that you can. And that is relative to you. That's relative to your frame, your skeleton, your genetics, the opportunities at your disposal, etc. That's relative. But become the best that you can. You should never give less than that. Why is that important? More important than a fighting style? Because styles don't win fights. Work wins fights. You have to be willing to put in the work. Now, I have seen big dudes that could box. I have seen big dudes that could wrestle. I have seen big dudes doing jiu-jitsu. I have seen big dudes doing all of those things. And I've seen big dudes sitting on the couch eating potato chips, not doing anything. So what's a better fighting style? Let's call it a working style. The guy who gets up and goes to work. The guy who does something every day to get stronger. The guy who does something every day to get more flexible. The guy who does something every day to get more technical. That's the guy who wins fights. Why? Because when he goes to work, he realizes how his body works. And maybe the fighting style of squish is right up your alley. And maybe it's not. But you won't know until you actually get in the gym with other real humans and get out there and train. There's a lot more going on than just the size and the shape of a person. I answered a similar question to this. Somebody pointed out other sports have ideal body shapes. For example, if I say, what's the ideal shape for a swimmer? A lot of people will say, Michael Phelps, shaped like him, long, long arms and weird long body and stuff like that, right? What's the ideal shape for an NFL linebacker? And we immediately think of a giant human being, right? What's the ideal shape for an NBA player? Really tall guy who can jump really well, something like that, right? But what's the ideal shape for fighting? Well, fighting has a lot more variables and incidentals than those other sports. It has, I was about to say, a lot less that we can control, but it's got different things that we can control just going on in very, very different intervals. So the variables are much, much greater and vastly different, meaning that there is no ideal body shape. There is an ideal way to use your specific body against another specific body. So that being said, my friend, do what I suggested. Get out there and train.